Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Today to Intersect Radio. Glad you all could join us. Another Tuesday here down in the drum room. But I have a very special guest today. She is a singer, songwriter, and author who hails from Knoxville, Tennessee. She has been a guest or background vocalist on more than 300 albums and has also released 9 solo albums of her own work over her career. She's had TV appearances, too numerous to name all of them. The one most people I know remember is her appearance on Stone Country's tribute to the Rolling Stones, where she performed that Rolling Stone classic, Give Me Shelter. She's had a total of 4 Grammy nominations for her music, winning 3 of them. And in 2013, she published her first memoir, Little Black Sheep, which I just finished today, and I found it most fascinating. You know, it's a great story. Her life is just like, I was mesmerized. It was hard to put it down because her life story is so great. And plus I know her and, you know, had no idea that this was the life she had led. And we kind of lost touch until the other day. But would you please, I ramble on, welcome my guest and my friend, Miss Ashley Cleveland, to Intersect Radio. How you doing, Ashley?
Hey, Aaron. Good to be with you always.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said yes.
Me too. It's always nice to be wanted.
Well, you know, I started reading your book on Thursday, finished it today, and, you know, I got out of bed this morning, grabbed the book, and started reading, and I couldn't stop. And when I got to the end and realized it was the end, it was like, wow, that was quick. You know, I just thought it was going to go on and on and on forever, but, you know, it was great. It's really good. You know, I recommend this memoir to all you people out there. You know, it starts off with your childhood in Knoxville, Tennessee, and progresses to your childhood in San Francisco and then back to Tennessee. So just give us a little tidbit of what childhood was like.
Well, like you say, I'm a Tennessee native. I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the late 1950s, and I was born into a family that was already collapsing by the time I arrived, and for more than one reason. I was born into Southern society, which is, you know, a strange thing all on its own, but my parents were both very beautiful, very accomplished, but my father was gay, and in his mind, and I don't, you know, I used to say he was heavily closeted, but I don't, I really think that he was more compartmentalized than anything else. I think he really felt like he could have his life sort of separated out into little compartments, but the problem was that his true life, his intimate life, and his real relationships lay outside of his family with in a group of men that were friends and more to him, and so my parents' marriage collapsed, and then both my parents too were alcoholics, and early in life their drinking had not started to progress, but the signs were all there, and so into all that I came tumbling, and along with my little sister, and so I think there was just so much trouble early on that comes with a family that is disintegrating. That it was just really hard for me to find my footing, and yet, Knoxville is, I think it's the third largest city in Tennessee, but that's not saying a whole lot. There's and particularly, I mean, it's larger and more cosmopolitan now, certainly, but back then it had the feel of a smaller town. And so, for those of us that didn't have a great deal of stability at home, there was the larger community where you could draw a lot of stability. And and because your my extended family was there, we had a lot of friends. I lived in a neighborhood where, I roamed that neighborhood my mother never knew where I was, but there were very few houses I couldn't go in and get a sandwich and use the bathroom if I needed to. And I mean, everybody knew everybody. And so there was and then once my parents divorced, my mother was working for a company that gave her kind of carte blanche on they wanted to have a grassroots expansion, and told her, you can move anywhere in the continental United States you'd like to move and get this company going there. And she said, well, it's either going to be Boston or San Francisco, and she opted for San Francisco. So we moved to Marin County, which was fully 15. Well, you grew up in California. I mean, it was 15 or 20 years ahead of anything happening in Tennessee, period. And so it was like being shot out of a rocket ship to the moon. I had, in terms of a frame of reference, I didn't have any. So
I like the part where you said you were disappointed when you saw that the Golden Gate Bridge was red.
I know that. Yeah, I was expecting something a lot more magical, and but it was thrilling because it was so unspeakably not only beautiful but different. The topography was so different, and everything about it was so different. And San Francisco was such a glorious city, and it still is in many, many ways. And Marin County that's where we settled, and that was beautiful. But I arrived as a broken-hearted child, and now the rug had kind of been pulled out from underneath me in terms of my place in the world. So I think initially I was probably an exotic at the local elementary school. I was in third grade when we moved out there, and they, I talk like this, and I was completely awkward in every possible way, and
well, you were a little spitfire before when you left Knoxville.
Well, I was a spitfire, but not in the best light, and so, but they were entertained by it for about a minute, and then after that, it was nothing but scorn and contempt. So it was just a hard it was a hard transition, and it remained hard, and I didn't, I didn't do a thing to help it. I didn't know how, and I got bullied, and I turned right around and bullied other kids. I mean, I just, I think in some ways I reacted like a feral, wounded animal. I just kind of did what I could to survive, and all of which is to say, as I got older, eventually my mother had remarried, and I had a very contentious relationship with my stepfather. So, and was, busy getting in trouble, and I found trouble wherever I went, and eventually my stepfather told my mother she would have to choose between me and him, which is an impossible. Yeah, it's an impossible choice. And,
yeah, it is.
But the upshot was that I moved back to live with my father. And back then, and my father had no idea what was involved in child rearing. I mean, we spent the summers with him, but he hired caregivers because he had a company, and so he just thought you could tell your child what you expected and then go about your business, and they would just blindly obey.
Obey. Yeah, right. No question whatsoever.
No pushback, no nothing. And so my father, I got to Knoxville, and he said, well, you're going to need a way to get to school, so let's get you a car. And I'm sitting here thinking, I have completely hit the jackpot. And there were no rules, there were no restrictions, there was no curfew. And, the only thing I had to endure was if I did something, which I did on a regular basis, that my father did not like. I got the
How
silent
old were you?
treatment. Well, when I arrived, I was 16.
16, yeah. To get a car.
Yeah, and so I got a car, and I was a year ahead in school, so I went to the high school, and I got in the work-study program, which was so ludicrous because I didn't even have a job. But,
Did you study?
I didn't work, and I didn't study. I don't know. I think my father sort of pretended to give me a job, and because I would get waitress jobs, but then I'd be fired because, the manager would say, this is a service industry, and you clearly are not interested in providing anyone with service. So, I don't, and I think I really just specialized in skipping school, and they graduated me probably just to get rid of me, but the thing was, in Knoxville back then, the drinking age was 18, so I could get into bars easily, and I did, and started drinking, and later in college started using drugs, and I really fell into a deep hole.
Where'd you go to college?
Well, my father would tell you I was registered at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Now, class attendance, once again, was not my specialty. But the great thing that happened for me at UT was that I met a woman who's still a good friend, Pam Tillis. And she is from a country music dynasty. Her father is Mel Tillis. And, there were back then in the little strip that ran through the center of the university campus, there were a lot of music clubs, and I think they're nearly all restaurants now, but there was just a lot of live music venues on campus, and that's what I was interested in. I had also, somewhere along the way, I had talked some guy into teaching me 5 guitar chords, and I'd learned I think 5 Neil Young songs to go with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
yeah, you say you played them over and over again?
Over and over, yeah. And I would get tips to stop playing, to take a break. And that's how I earned that's how I began to make money in, $5s in the music business.
So what were you studying at the University of Tennessee?
My initial major was journalism and with a French minor. I still love French. I still study French, but I'm not so much of a journalist. I'm much more of a creative writer, and I love to write, and I had a natural gift for writing. And as it turns out, despite my inauspicious start with music, I had a really natural gift for music, and music became the one thing that engendered any kind of positive response. I was so accustomed to getting negative reactions for my behavior. When I took up music, that was, people would turn around and say, "Oh, you do that well," or "You have a great singing voice," or "You blah blah blah." And it just became an oasis for me in a very troubled world. And so what happened with Pam was I walked into a club one night, and there she was, sitting behind a guitar that was larger than she was, singing and playing, and she was fantastic. And we got to be big friends, and then created a folk duo. But the gift she gave me was the idea that I could be a songwriter.
Oh, that's good.
And back then, music was so much of a mystery that it is not, because of technology. I mean, music has become accessible to anybody that wants to make music or record music. That is utterly, there's a path to that is clear and easy. I mean, you can use your telephone to record music. But back then, nobody knew anything about, recording. No lay people, let's put it that way, knew anything about recording technology. It was just such a mysterious thing, and there weren't that many artists in the world. And when somebody's album was released, it was this enormous vinyl disc.
Yeah, actually, we're gonna have to take a break right here for a commercial. But hold that thought, problem. And we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Born with a God-shaped hole, and a map of my country burned in my soul. One step, then another. So much ground to cover. All the way to heaven, all the way to heaven, all the way is heaven. All the way to heaven, all the way to heaven, all the way is a heaven.
Welcome back, everybody. That's music from my guest today, Miss Ashley Cleveland. And before we took that commercial break, Ashley, you were just right on you were telling us about, beginning to tell us about recording, and you mentioned how back then, nobody really had a grasp on recording like they do now. Like, you can do it anywhere. You can do it in your bedroom. You can do it in your car. They got
I think it
programs
was
for all
more
that
the
stuff.
whole music industry. Nobody knew. I mean, how does somebody become a rock star? How does somebody do something like play music for a living? I mean, all of that, at least maybe people knew, but I didn't know, and nobody I knew. It was so mysterious, and there were the music industry itself was much smaller and much more tight knit. So what Pam did for me was she came from a music town, and her father owned a publishing company. I mean, I thought you had to get a permission from someone to write songs. I didn't know you could. I didn't know you could just sit down and do it.
Right.
And yeah, she really disavowed me of all that mystery and said, no, you can, you have to go where it's being done. That is one thing that you might consider, but no, you just start doing it and you keep doing it. And I think the first song I ever wrote, she and I wrote together, and her father's company, they liked it and they published it, and no one ever recorded it, but just the fact that they took it and that was my ticket. It was like, okay, I'm a songwriter, period. Yeah. Somebody liked something I did, and that was really the beginning for me. And I actually went back to California after I stayed in school for a couple of years, and my father said, this is ludicrous. There's no reason for me to pay a tuition for you to play in clubs.
Yeah.
So I left school, went back to California, and started playing in earnest.
Initially, how did you get into music? How did you know that music was the thing for you?
It was a process of elimination, Aaron. I didn't want to do I couldn't do anything else. I was, music was the one thing that I really was able to do and loved to do and could do. And also simultaneously, I was becoming a serious addict. And so, I was untrained in I did not complete any type of an education, but I also was untrainable and disinterested. But what little rational thought and ability I had, every bit of it went into music. And, it was a little more acceptable to be a hard drinker if your job was to play music. There were a lot of us.
It's kind of
So,
expected.
almost, yeah, in the club life that I lived, I came up in the club, and once I was 21, I went up and down the Northern California coastline playing, and it was a crazy time, and it's miraculous that I lived through it now when I think back to it, but it was not, and I certainly made some very bad choices, and I had a lot of angry club owners and people that invited me never to come back.
Really?
Oh gosh,
what did you do?
Oh, well, I drank far too much, and by the end of any given night, I was just as likely to be falling down as standing up. I was also into a copious amount of drug taking. I remember one show I took a band up to a winery to play a private party, and took LSD right before we went on, and that was a complete disaster.
I did that once.
Well, once is way more than too much.
Right, it is. It was.
I mean, I was just going to do what I was going to do. And, and I was not going to be told to do otherwise. And it really, the only reason that I was able to keep working was because the gift itself was strong enough, but I certainly disrespected it and did not care for it in any conceivable way. It's a wonder that I hung on to it. But looking back, that really was the first thing in my life that suggested to me that there was a God in the world who was kind, because I felt like the music that he gave me was this marker to kind of keep me on the planet, because I was so self-destructive and did not care. But what little I had to care with, I cared about the music, and I did it, and it gave me something to do. And I think that had I not had that, the abyss would have called me, and I just would have leapt right in. So, it was his token to me, and I know that. So.
And then you had Becca.
And that was another token of a far bigger one, and having her saved my life. So I was at the height of my drinking and using, and I was very ill. And I wound up pregnant after a relationship that had already ended. And, at that time, this was 1981, and treatment centers were not even on the horizon. They weren't part of the public lexicon. And, Alcoholics Anonymous was truly anonymous in terms of, nobody that I knew knew anything about it. We just thought it was ex-convicts and homeless people. So when I found out I was pregnant, I had no idea what to do. I didn't know where to go to get help. So I went to the church, and the church, they were so kind to me and did everything they could, but the church didn't know what to do either, and did not have any kind of education about addiction, at least the one that I was at. And so, I just kind of white-knuckled my way through my pregnancy and had horrible slips, not many, but the ones I had were bad. And And I was expecting, I suppose the word would be punishment. I was expecting God to punish me for failing, and I was expecting a child that was compromised in every way, and I just didn't know.
Wow.
And,
but you found grace.
I did. When I had her, I was in a hospital, a small hospital in Northern California, and I ended up having to have a C-section because she was breech. And my mother, God bless her, was my Lamaze coach, and we ended up not needing it, but she was there with me, and so I was out of it when the baby was born. I just have a very vague memory of her, and they put a little cap on her head and took me to recovery, and I'm in this recovery room by myself as it happened that day. And my mother came in very briefly and said, after maybe an hour or two, and said, she's just wonderful. She's so lovely. And I was so terrified. I just was so afraid. And I said, well, is she okay? And my mother said, oh, they've checked her head. She's great. She's fine. She's good.
You said in your book that that was your first recognized encounter with God, having Becca.
It really was. I lay there. My mother left, and I lay there thinking, how could that be? How could she be okay? How could this be happening? And I really felt like that the God that I have come to know today, that was the first time where I felt like he pulled back a curtain and sort of leaned into me and said, see, I'm not who you think I am. And I thought, you know what? I have no idea who you are. Clearly, I mean, I'm from the South. I grew up in the church, but that doesn't mean that we know anything about Jesus. Right. It just means we go to church because that's what nice people do. And but I left that hospital with Rebecca about a week later. That was back when you could stay in the hospital and actually recover. I left the hospital knowing two things that I had not known before, that there was a God with me, and I had no idea why. And it was 2 years before I really started recovering. But knowing that began to change me, and having her gave me a will, not just to live, but to do my best to try to learn how to be a mother and to give her something of value. Because I wouldn't have done it for myself, but having her, I thought, I really want to do this. It just, I don't know how. And it took me a couple of years to get there. And I guess, it takes us all our lives to get, close to these things. But 2 years later, I was hospitalized. And shortly after that, I started my first genuine effort at recovery.
Okay. At Alcoholics Anonymous?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, I went to a treatment center, and then I did go to AA, but in the beginning I was afraid of AA, and there was a really strong group in Nashville, and there is a really strong community and group, and I just didn't want to go to groups. And I didn't, and I think some of that had to do with my my elementary school experience. I had a lot of hostility in group settings, and I was just afraid of them. And So I kind of cherry picked what they taught me in the hospital and said, well, I'll do this part, but I won't do that part. And I'll do this part, and I won't do that part. And so, you know, I stayed sober for 7 years after I got out of the hospital, and I kind of worked at it, but really what I did was I created a sober community around myself, which was not hard to do because there were a lot of sober musicians in Nashville at the time. But I never really gave my heart to recovery. And the upshot of that was that when Kenny and I got married, and, you know, usually a lot of my bad choices are preceded by fear. So I was afraid to be married because I thought, well, I've screwed up everything else in my life. Surely I'll screw this one up too.
Oh, no.
So right before I got married, and with an addict's talent at timing, I relapsed and drank off and on for another 6 years between having 2 more children and trying to keep a marriage going and trying to have by then I was a recording artist, and by then I had met you, and so sometimes, you know, I'd go through periods where I didn't drink and periods where I tried to be a moderate drinker so I could prove that I could drink, and then I went through periods where, you know, I didn't do so well. But it was really the insanity in my own thinking that convinced me that I was truly an alcoholic, that I would not ever be otherwise, that moderation for me was a pipe dream. So,
man, yeah, it's tough coming to that reality.
I don't think I could have done it apart from God. You know, He gave me the will to really seek recovery in earnest, and to follow the 12-step program as written, and to come back in the room and be willing to be taught, which prior to that I was fairly unteachable. And
well, we're gonna have to take another break right here. We'll be back, folks.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
Sure.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on intertalkradio.com.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
in to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Amen to that. We're back with my guest today, Miss Ashley Cleveland. Thank you so much. That's I love that song. That's great.
Me too. Thank you.
When did you know that you were here to preach the gospel? I asked you that because you do kind of operate in, like, let's call it the secular world and the Christian music world, and you kind of go through those things with ease. So I know you didn't choose it; it chose you. When did you know that?
Well, I mean, songwriting for me has always been a way to sort of work out whatever's going on inside. I mean, and so it is for every writer, I mean, or maybe not, but for this writer, that's the truth. And, and I think about my first record, which was like this catalog of longing for love and to belong in the world. And, I used to joke that the verses were all full of despair, and then there was a tiny bit of hope in the chorus. but once Kenny and I mean, I really, I have a great mensch of a husband, who has my back and has been so good to me as just a partner. And that longing was satisfied. And I feel so free to write about whatever I want to write about. And that's kind of the beauty of never being particularly successful in any given setting. I never was. I'm a failed CCM artist and I'm a failed secular artist, but so I belong nowhere and I go everywhere. And but the beauty of it is I can do whatever I want. Because nobody outside my fans, they don't care. So it's a good thing. And so for me as a writer, more and more as I began to come into recovery and I really surrendered to a sober life, it was a hole in there. I recognize a lot of us say, we come into these 12-step rooms, we come into these programs, we come because drinking is killing us, and we come to learn how to let go of drinking or to find out about that. But what we find out really is that we don't have any idea in the world how to live. And we have to figure out how to live. And so for me, this gaping hole that began when I was a small child was right there. And I had been dousing it with filling it with the drink. And, you know, but once that was gone, I needed to fill it with something. And I filled it with God. And I let him fill it. Really, I didn't do anything. I just said yes. I just said, please, help. That's what I said.
Help.
Yes. And I diligently tried to clean up. Those 12 steps are, you know, all about making peace. And once I made peace with the Lord and I knew he had peace with me, then, you know, I began to make peace with myself and with others and trying to clean up the wreckage that lay in my wake. And but all of which is to say that the thing that compels me, the thing that most captivates my imagination, the thing that gives me hope and that gives me a sense of, you know, mission in the world, if I'm to say such a lofty thing, is all around faith. And it's not that I'm some big giant of faith, because I'm just as lame as anybody, but it's the thing, I'm a contemplative, and it's the thing that draws me and urges me. And I just think, God, if God can take somebody as big a mess as me and give me a usefulness, nothing is beyond him.
Right.
In the human realm. And it is so thrilling to me to think, to be able to use music, but also every resource I have. I do a lot of work with other addicts and just it's such a debilitating illness, and it destroys so many families and so many individuals and just, you know, you name it. And it's a destructive force, and yet people, you know, there's no shortage of devotion to drinking and using in our country. So, you know, I'm here for those that get kicked to the curb that are suffering from it. And
man, I'm
I
glad
really,
you're there.
that's just as important to me too. So yeah. And which was why I wrote the book, you know.
Right. That's and getting back to the book, you were telling me that the book is going to become a movie.
Well, so my management gave a copy of the book to a film company in Los Angeles, and they really thought it would make an interesting documentary. So that is wrapping up. It's in post-production, and it follows the storyline of the book. And I'm not sure, it will not be called, the documentary won't be called Little Black Sheep. That's the name of the book. But I don't, right now they're looking at a couple of different titles, so I'm not exactly sure the title of it. I know that, you know, very shortly they'll begin to put it all together and pitch to film festivals, and then this is kind of their world, and I know very little about it, but it's really fun. It covers my music career simultaneously, so it's
great.
It's been great, and who knows? You know, I hope it does well. I wouldn't have the slightest idea, but it's in the works, and so I'm working on a couple of other books, and I've got a new record coming out. And
really? You're working on a couple of other books at the same time, simultaneously?
Yeah, well, you know, my part in it, you know, documentaries are so strange, Aaron, because, you know, for any artist or musician or creative person, your creative content, you're in the center of it. You, a lot of people do it all, and I'm certainly right up in the middle of my records and writing books is a solitary pursuit. But in this documentary, I was just there for my interviews and the music footage, but there's a whole lot of interview footage that not only was I not part of, I'm not allowed to be there because it'll affect how people respond. And so I didn't know what it was about until I saw it for the first time. And
Really?
they've worked on it for three years. Yeah. They presented it to me.
So you had no idea?
No, I was terrified. I thought, because, I knew what I said in the book, and I knew, but I had no idea. And it's people have their own perspectives, but they were utterly sympathetic, and and the people they chose to interview were great, and obviously I had a lot of input on that. But then, when you interview somebody for something like that, you talk to them for a long time, and then you take little sound bites of what they. So,
right.
You just, it's such an art form and such a detailed and I'm in awe of the filmmakers and just the little pieces that they took to make it flow so seamlessly. It's really something. But I didn't know, Kenny and I we were on pins and needles thinking, what happens if we
don't like it?
If it doesn't work, right? Yeah, it's one thing to say, well, in this scene, could you do this a little? It's one thing to make small changes. It's another thing entirely if the whole tone is not how you'd like to be presented. But they were fantastic. So I was most relieved.
So right now you're working on 2 books and a new record?
Yeah, the record's done. We just need to finish mixing, which all I do in that part of it is say, I like it, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Which I like. That's my favorite place to be judging.
What are the other 2 books about?
So one is about my mom, who's a really fascinating person, and it's a series of essays about her life, but also how her life and my life intersect. And then the other one is about my oldest daughter, Becca, who is so Becca is also an addict, and there's a very long, difficult story there. But so I just, it's sort of a continuation of writing about my own experience now as somebody who's been in recovery for 20 years, but now as the parent of a heroin addict, and what that is, and what experience has taught me, and so I just have found that I really like to write, and I like to write prose as much as songs are. I've always felt pretty confident about songwriting, but once I got one book under my belt, I thought, well, I think I'll keep after this, regardless of where it goes or where it doesn't go. I really enjoy it, and the one with my mom is wonderful because I interview her on a kind of a semi-regular basis, but she's almost 85, and it's just, I can't imagine a lovelier way to sort of begin to wind her life down. Yeah. For me, I've learned a good bit too. So.
Well, that's great. Well, we're unfortunately running out of time here. And again, I want to thank you for being on the broadcast today. And
thank you for the invitation.
I want to tell everybody that all of Ashley's contact information is on the Intersect Radio Facebook page, and it's also on the intertalkradio.com page. And you can go there and you can find out about her books when they come out, and the new record, the title, when it's going to be released. Find out.
I can
where
tell you
she's
the
performing.
title of the record.
Oh,
Yeah.
what is it?
The new record is going to be called One More Song.
One More Song. Cool.
That may be literally true.
Let's
You
hope
never
not.
know.
Let's hope not.
I hope not, but you never, you just kind of live in the present. So.
Well, hey, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Aaron. It's so good to connect with you.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. Pitbullaudio.com.